It took me a while to realize this, but the dotted parts on her is actually armor. It's motorcycle body armor. It's like a modernized interpretation of historical armor. Huge props to Mihoyo for trying to tie in her Viking roots to her outfit. Welcome back, besties. Today we're gonna talk about Caesar King from ZZZ. She is soon to be released. Woo! Because this game's a gacha RPG and very different from Concord, which is what I talked about in my last video, the criteria is gonna be different. For example, I didn't like how Baz's design failed to inform me that she's an agile flanker. But here in ZZZ, it's not as important because the gameplay is fundamentally different. You don't only have 2 seconds to identify who the support is on the enemy team before you lose the fight. That time crunch isn't there because you're the only player in the game. You control your own team that chances are you've meticulously put together. And most likely, you've been introduced to the characters you're playing because they were NPCs from previous events. Before a character even drops, you've got some story content and plenty of teasers, showcases, agent combat intel, ZZZ blog posts, and so much more. ZZZ drip feeds you so much information about a character pre-release that they truly feel fleshed out by the time they become playable. It's almost like getting to know someone in real life, where every bit of content is like an interaction or a conversation that you're having with a stranger who throughout the course of several weeks slowly becomes a friend. It's not a race, it's a marathon. However, for PvP or fast-paced shooters, it is a race. One common criticism with Mihoyo games is that the character silhouettes look too alike. To many, it's a design flaw, but I don't really agree with that. Sure, the spectrum is narrower as far as silhouettes and body types than compared to like Overwatch, but their target audience, who they've clearly identified, is just as narrow. If you play Mihoyo games, you have to generally like or be okay with traditional anime style characters. I'm not gonna go into detail about what's traditional anime style because I feel like that's a whole nother video, but just imagine most of the anime you've watched in your life. What did most of the characters look like? Big eyes, big heads, slimmer bodies, palish skin, colorful eyes, and hair. I'm not defending this art style. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just letting you know that this is the style that I see in these games. Within this narrower spectrum, there is a surprising amount of character design variance, and that's what we're going to talk about today when it comes to Caesar. Is that a good enough segue? I spent some time expressing my appreciation for Mihoyo because this character is a good character. Don't think that I don't think they're amazingly designed. I just have to be specific and it might come across as picky. When there's less things glaringly wrong, like I have to get into the details. Please remember I'm working with limited information. The character's story isn't out yet. I haven't played her. My opinions are just opinions and it's subject to change, especially after she drops. You don't have to agree with me, and that's the beauty of opinions. I'm just trying out a ranking system because I thought it'd be more fun. If I want to keep using this ranking system, I'm sure it's going to get better in the future. I'll probably make it more precise and more specific over time. But for now, please don't take the points too seriously. It's all a little arbitrary. I'd much rather you focus on what I'm saying and my talking points over a letter grade. For point of interest, I like to ask what initially attracts me to the character. It's a focal point or a set of focal points that's usually emphasized with more details that contribute to the character's identity and oftentimes silhouette. Second is theme. Is it clear and understandable? For concept, it's how well does the character's personality traits, behaviors, and physical attributes mesh together and help support one another. So how well does the overall character work together? Last is power fantasy. Do I feel cool playing the character? Do I want to imagine myself being that character? Caesar King. She is the leader of the baddest biker gang around. What is the type? She is an S rank physical defense agent. Her one-line bio is, there's more to battle than just glory. I don't remember where I read this, but I read it as she's not fighting to fight, and she's not just trying to win to be purely the victor. She's doing it for a deeper purpose. She's not this rage-fueled, power-chasing leader. She's got a plan, you know? The game describes her as spunky, which means courageous and determined, which I really do agree fits. For point of interest, it's a little harder to figure out in this game than like compared to Overwatch, but they definitely still have one. The easiest way for me to figure it out with Caesar is to take this character key art and just imagine her body parts as shapes. There's nothing too excited like on her bottom half, so let's just cut that off and we can zoom in on the shapes here. So what I did is I made the face be a square, I made her chest be like a large rectangle, almost like a shelf. And then this is sort of like her waist and pelvis. Essentially what I'm trying to determine with these shapes is where the eye level is. This here, the green line, represents that. Although honestly, I could just generalize it and say that the camera angle is head level. The reason being is that this is all an approximation, it's not accurate. If we take a look at her face, we can actually tell that her head's tilted down. But if we take a look at the square, it tells a different story, because if she was looking down and our angle was above her, then we would see the top of the square. If we take a look at the second shape, it's telling us that we are viewing her from above the chest. This here is all top bosom. If it was below chest level, like Bernice, then you would see the underboob. So what I surmise from that exercise is that Caesar is being drawn from a regular perspective. You are looking at her around head level, and the emphasis is really this area here. This is in contrast to Bernice, who is being drawn from a more exaggerated perspective. And to clarify, I'm only looking at her, not her weapons or any sort of props. So this character being, I think, the most well endowed in her house is miHoYo telling us that she's mature. And it makes sense because she's the leader. She's got the tufts of fur, which indicate that she's high ranking. And if that's not enough, she's literally got a gold chain that says king. I would have liked this area to include Sons of Calydon because I wouldn't have associated her with being in a biker gang. Yes, she's got the word king, but it tells us she's either a leader of somewhere we don't know of, or she's just got a big ego. And this is pretty important in biker gang subculture. It's really about wearing your club or house in this instance loudly and proudly. Your clothing is so much a part of you that it garners respect, creates social bonds, and boundaries. Of course, when we take her shield into consideration, this gives us a lot of information. We've got our house, her spiky star motif that seems unique to her that probably refers to her status as leader. And I don't really know what this is. If you guys know, let me know. What's her theme? She is a spunky biker gang leader. Is it clear and understandable? Yes. Her stance is wide and balanced. Her head's down, she's confident. It's clear she's in a biker gang, and her fur and the hardware she's wearing shows that she's a leader. So her design borrows more from Viking warriors than Roman legionaries. Even though her name's Caesar, she's got a sword and shield, which the Romans used, but the fur and the horns read Viking, and of course Vikings used swords and shields too. Her personality to me is bold, confident, and passionate. She's tough, she's ambitious, she's the definition of baddie. Like any good leader, she knows when to embolden her team and when to protect her team. A good leader is also loyal and trustworthy. She's full of battle terminology like battle, spirit, glory, resilience, conqueror, smash, king. I would expect this character to have a more aggressive and punchy personality, maybe even barbaric, like her old design. There's somewhat of a negative connotation to the word conqueror because it implies you took over a place or people, usually by force. It's like she's almost too good to be associated with some of these words. She's shown no signs that she's morally gray. She just seems like a good person.
A race? Sounds like we can expect to see some real cutthroat and underhanded action.
What do you mean, cutthroat and underhanded? Whoever wins or loses is decided fair and square.
To be clear, this is just a nitpick, but when I see this, it aligns more. She looks like someone with a spiky, short temper that has a king complex that is ready to smash and conquer and take by force. From what I've seen, she's actually quite kind and polite. I have to admit, sometimes it's hard to reconcile the fact that she's this fair and kind-hearted leader when the way she's described and presented feels more barbaric. She still works because her power fantasy of being this indomitable conqueror is fully realized in her gameplay. Additionally, some of the stuff she says does give her that much needed punchiness, but there's a reason why archetypes exist, and I can't help but feel like I want some more oomph from her. Maybe her level-headedness and kindness adds dimension to her character, and it definitely makes her more likable and approachable. Let's be real, miHoYo wants you to pull for her. Banners are up for 3 weeks at a time, and that is a long time for somebody to not be excited for new content. Would I have liked to see an Amazonian sword and shield swinging queen on a Mad Max looking bike with a few screws loose because her brain's been baked to a crisp under the sun? Heck yes. And she can still be a great leader, just a little wild and unpredictable because she's from a place that's equally wild and unpredictable and lawless. But that would be a different game entirely. And the Tour de Inferno isn't some crazy red line race. The winner is meant to win fair and square. Maybe. Okay, let's break down the new versus old design. Old design's primary theme is Viking warrior, and the biker gangster theme is secondary, if not almost non-existent. I suppose these booties that are more bikerish, the lettering on the sides feel a little bit more sporty or bikerish. This armband might indicate her being number one or the leader of Sons of Calydon, but there's just like not so much. I mean, I guess, is that a Nike swoosh? So everything that I just highlighted could honestly also just infer that she's sporty. You know how there's a clothing style that's like sporty? It could honestly just be interpreted as that. And now that I take a look at her just like dressed, it's giving me Serena Williams at like a tennis dress. She's got a headpiece that's huge. It's almost like a crown. So I am interchanging Viking warrior with Viking king. Her hair has so much personality. I kind of love it. The shape is reinforced by the fur lining on her cape. It feels explosive. It feels like someone from the Outer Ring. It's unkept, it's wild, just like the place where she's from. It's giving wolf cut. This character makes me think the only thing she cares about is booze and fighting. With the shape of her mouth, I'm imagining her saying something crass or burping. However, as much as I appreciate this concept, it doesn't represent her true personality or behavior. And it doesn't really work with ZZZ. Her current design is more on point with her character, which is an assertive and decisive leader that leads with humility and integrity.
Our biggest baddie is the young leader of the Sons of Calydon, Caesar.
Hey, if we're talking fame, you're clearly the real star here.
In the new design, it's flipped. The Viking elements have taken a back seat. It's still there though. The crown or the large headpiece has now become the two hair clips. They kept the jagged edge star motif, although it's more subtle. The thing they changed least is her bottom half. She's still got the leather boots and almost the same leggings. They also gave her a rat tail, which apparently is a symbol of defiance. And honestly, it really fits the biker aesthetic. Since she has a sword and shield, I would have liked to see elements in her design that supported that, like maybe a few armored style pieces. The only metal I can see on her is her hardware, her hair pieces, and her weapons. It took me a while to realize this, but the dotted parts on her is actually armor. It's motorcycle body armor, and that is mind-blowingly cool for them to have added that. It's like a modernized interpretation of historical armor. Huge props to Mihoyo for trying to tie in her Viking roots to her outfit. It's a little on the obscure side, but I gotta give them credit, and this isn't something that I'm gonna dink them on. Her weapon choices seem to have been grandfathered in from her previous, more Viking-focused design. You could probably switch it out with a gun, a bat, or brass knuckles, and it would still work. So in her weapon flyer, there is a blurb here that I found kind of interesting. At first, I wasn't fond of these unwieldy weapons. They didn't seem like they were custom made for me, but when I wield them on the battlefield, I feel a comforting strength support me, guiding me forward as the leader of the Sons of Calydon. It's almost like Mihoyo knew that this could have been a weakness to her design, so they crafted up a story to explain how she ended up with the sword and shield. I respect that. I love that. They are just so aware and good at what they do. Her spiky star-shaped motif, it is weaker in this overall design because her lower half is kind of uninteresting compared to her upper half. I would have liked to see this shape be at least repeated somewhere on her lower half. Like honestly, her boots are okay, but they could be better. What if instead of regular knee pads, they repeated the shape of her like spiky star motif? Remember, this motif is unique to her and most likely symbolizes her status in the gang as the leader. Maybe the texture can be dotted, like the chest armor. I redid this side to try to make it look better, but her shield is what is elevating her design to the level that I expect from a biker king. It's actually another point of interest on her that gives her this really cool silhouette when she's holding it, but I didn't talk about it earlier because I thought it'd be too easy. There's definitely still elements on her body and not just weapon or props that make her interesting. Her power fantasy is to feel like a king. I'm the main character. I'm the final boss. The whole reason my bike gang is on this grand crusade to overtake the current overlord is because of me. That's what I want to achieve, and they're all here to support me. There's also pressure for me to perform in battle so that I can embolden them and protect them and lead them to victory. Does her gameplay live up to her power fantasy? Heck yes. ZZZ is so over the top with their animations that even A-rank characters who don't necessarily have the strongest designs still end up looking cool as hell. So after tallying up the points, she gets an 18.5, which puts her at an S-. This is based off a 20-point conversion chart, so anything between 18 and 19 is going to be an A- traditionally or S- for us. Her design strengths include a unique mix between biker gain and Viking aesthetics and an exceptionally well-designed shield. Her design weaknesses include a less informed lower half and a not fully realized personality with respect to her overall concept. Random thought, but what if her last name wasn't King and she didn't have that spelled out on her hair or neck or weapon? Would you have associated her with that word? Or would you have associated King with her previous design more? Her final design gives more biker boss than King. With that being said, King is just a cool word and can be interchanged with a ton of other words like boss, ruler, overlord, head honcho. I think throughout her production process, certain elements that were in the foreground are now in the background. Her old design used to scream Viking King, and now that's merely a whisper. What's taking center stage now is her being a biker. There's so many distinct elements on this character that they cannot be all vying for the center spotlight. These mixed elements is what gives her texture and uniqueness. If she was dropped in Overwatch, she might come across as a little confusing, but here in ZZZ, she's right at home. Are you guys pulling for her or Bernice? Who's Team Caesar and who's Team Bernice? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know your thoughts on the video, and if you like this sort of content, I am thinking of doing Bernice next. Till next time, besties. Take care!